I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I had heard so much about MEET RODIZIO, this amazing place where you could eat all sorts of delicious meats and socialize with friends. It sounded like a dream come true for a food lover like me. So I finally decided to give it a try. As I walked in, the aroma of grilled meats hit me, and my stomach growled in anticipation. But little did I know, my excitement would soon turn into one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. As I made my way to the table, I could feel eyes on me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but as I looked around, I caught a few people staring, their faces filled with a mix of surprise and disgust. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe they were just surprised to see someone new. But as I approached the buffet, the whispers started. "Look at him, he's so big. I wonder how he can eat that much. He must be really lazy to let himself get that way." Each comment was like a stab to my heart, making me feel more and more ashamed. I tried to focus on the food, to distract myself from the pain of being judged so harshly. But it was hard to enjoy anything when all I could think about was how I looked to these people. I felt like I was under a microscope, with everyone examining my every move, my every bite. The more I ate, the more I felt like I was confirming their assumptions about me. It was a vicious cycle, and I couldn't escape it. As the night wore on, the humiliation only intensified. People would make snide comments as I walked by, or laugh when I went for seconds, or thirds, or fourths. It was like they thought my size was a reflection of my worth as a person, like I was somehow less deserving of respect and kindness because of my weight. By the end of the night, I was in tears, feeling like I'd never be able to show my face in public again. As I left the MEET RODIZIO, I felt like I'd hit rock bottom. I was ashamed of my body, ashamed of my appetite, and ashamed of myself. But as I walked home, something inside of me clicked. I realized that I couldn't let the opinions of strangers define my self-worth. I deserved better than to be treated like that, and I knew I had to make a change. But the question was, where would I start? And would I be able to overcome the emotional scars of that night to transform my life? I'll never forget the day I hit rock bottom. The humiliation I felt at the MEET RODIZIO still lingered, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of being a plus-size outcast. I would often find myself wondering what I did wrong, and why I couldn't be like the others, confident, energetic, and full of life. My home, which was once a place of comfort and solace, had become a constant reminder of my struggles. The mirror in my bedroom seemed to reflect not just my physical appearance, but also my inner self, broken, defeated, and lost. As I wandered around my house, trying to make sense of my life, I stumbled upon a cookbook that my mom had given me a few years ago. It was filled with recipes for delicious barbecues and grilled meats. I had never really paid much attention to it, but something about it caught my eye that day. Maybe it was the smell of smoke and charcoal that wafted through my imagination, or the sound of sizzling meat that seemed to echo in my mind. Whatever it was, it sparked something within me, a desire to create, to nurture, and to bring people together through food. I started researching ways to improve my self-esteem and lose weight, scouring the internet for tips and tricks, reading books and articles, and talking to people who had been in my shoes. And then I stumbled upon the world of barbecue and cooking. I discovered that it wasn't just about throwing some meat on the grill. It was an art form, a science, and a way of life. I spent hours watching videos, reading recipes, and experimenting with different flavors and techniques. My kitchen, which was once a place of occasional visits, became my sanctuary, my happy place. As I delved deeper into the world of barbecue, I began to see a glimmer of hope for a better future. I realized that I didn't have to be defined by my weight or my appearance. I could be defined by my passions, my talents, and my love for cooking. The smoke and flames of the grill seemed to symbolize my transformation, a burning desire to change, to grow, and to rise from the ashes. And with every dish I created, every meal I cooked, and every person I fed, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that I had never felt before. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was on a path towards self-improvement, towards a life of purpose and meaning. The MEET RODIZIO, which had once been a source of humiliation, now seemed like a distant memory, a reminder of where I had been, but not where I was going. I was no longer the same person who had been ridiculed and belittled. I was becoming someone new, someone who was confident, passionate, and full of life. And as I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the sights, smells, and tastes of my newfound passion, I knew that I was ready to face whatever came next, including the possibility of returning to the MEET RODIZIO and facing those who had humiliated me. But for now, I was just going to enjoy the journey, one delicious barbecue at a time. I still remember the day I decided to take control of my life. It was like a switch had been flipped. I started by making small changes to my daily routine, trying to eat healthier and exercise more regularly. It wasn't easy, especially after the humiliation I faced at the MEET RODIZIO, but I was determined to prove to myself that I was more than what those people saw in me. As I began to work on my physical health, I also found solace in cooking. There was something therapeutic about being in the kitchen, experimenting with different recipes and ingredients. It was my happy place, where I could forget about the world outside and just focus on creating something delicious. My kitchen became my sanctuary, filled with the aroma of freshly baked bread, the sound of sizzling vegetables, and the warmth of a simmering stew. I spent hours in there, trying out new dishes and techniques, and it wasn't long before I started to notice significant changes in my body. The weight was melting off, and I had more energy than I knew what to do with. But it wasn't just about the physical transformation. I was also becoming more confident in my cooking skills. I started sharing my creations with friends and family, and their positive feedback was like fuel to my fire. They would rave about my dishes, asking for recipes and begging me to cook for them again. It was a surreal experience, going from being the guy who was humiliated at the MEET RODIZIO to being the one everyone wanted to cook for. I started to see a new sense of purpose and belonging, like I had finally found my place in the world. And as I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the people I loved, I knew that I was on the right path. But little did I know, this was only the beginning of my journey. As I continued to cook and share my passion with others, I started to realize that my transformation was not just about me. It was about the impact I could have on those around me. And with that thought, a new question emerged. Could I take this newfound confidence and turn it into a successful return to the MEET RODIZIO? Only time would tell, but for now, I was just going to enjoy the ride. I stood outside the MEET RODIZIO, my heart racing with anticipation and a hint of nervousness. It had been months since I'd last set foot in this place, months since I'd been humiliated and ridiculed for my size. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I'd spent countless hours honing my craft, perfecting my barbecue skills, and building my confidence. I was ready to face my demons and show the people who had once belittled me that I was more than just a plus-size guy who couldn't even get a decent meal. As I pushed open the door and stepped inside, a wave of familiarity washed over me. The smell of sizzling meat and the sound of lively chatter filled the air, transporting me back to a time when I'd felt like an outcast. But today I was different. Today I was the barbecue man, and I was here to make a statement. I made my way to the grill, my eyes scanning the room for familiar faces. And then I saw them, the regulars who had once mocked me, now staring at me in surprise and admiration. They couldn't believe the transformation that had taken place before their eyes. I was no longer the awkward, shy guy who'd been too afraid to even try the MEET RODIZIO. I was a force to be reckoned with, a master of the grill, and a man on a mission. As I began to cook, the crowd gathered around me, watching in awe as I worked my magic. The sizzle and crackle of the meat, the aroma of the spices, and the presentation of the dishes all combined to create a culinary experience that left everyone speechless. They begged for my attention, asking for tips and recipes and clamoring for a taste of my creations. I was the center of attention, and I lapped up every bit of it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The MEET RODIZIO, once a place of humiliation and shame, had become my kingdom, and I was the ruler. I was the barbecue man, and people would do anything to get a piece of me. As I basked in the admiration of the crowd, I couldn't help but wonder, would I be able to stay humble and true to myself? Or would the fame and attention go to my head? Only time would tell, but for now, I was just going to soak it all in and enjoy the ride. I still remember the day I got my first interview with a local food blogger. I was nervous, but also excited to share my story and my passion for barbecue with the world. The blogger, a young woman with a big smile and an even bigger appetite, came to my house, and we sat down in the backyard, surrounded by the smell of smoke and meat. She asked me about my journey, about how I went from being humiliated at the MEET RODIZIO to becoming the barbecue man that everyone was talking about. I told her everything, from the early days of experimenting with different recipes to the moment when I finally found my groove and started to build a following. She listened intently, taking notes and asking questions, and I could see the excitement in her eyes as she realized that she was onto something big. The article she wrote about me was amazing, It was like she had crawled into my skin and understood exactly what made me tick. She wrote about my passion, my dedication, and my willingness to take risks and try new things. After that, the interviews just kept coming. Journalists and influencers from all over the city wanted to talk to me, to learn more about the man behind the barbecue. I was invited to cook at exclusive events and parties, where I would meet people who were eager to taste my food and learn from my experiences. It was surreal, to say the least. I would look around and see all these people, all these faces, and I would think to myself, how did I get here? How did a plus-size guy from nowhere become the barbecue man that everyone wanted a piece of? As my reputation grew, so did my business. I started to build a brand around my barbecue skills, creating a website, social media accounts, and even a line of merchandise. It was a lot of work, but it was also incredibly rewarding. I was finally able to make a living doing something I loved, and I was able to share that love with others. I started to get requests from all over the city, people wanting me to cater their events, their parties, and their weddings. I was making money, I was making people happy, and I was living my dream. But with all the success came new challenges. I had to navigate the world of entrepreneurship, learning about marketing, finance, and management. I had to deal with criticism, with people who didn't like my food or my attitude. I had to stay focused, stay true to myself and my passion, and not get distracted by all the noise. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to make it work. I was determined to be the best barbecue man I could be and to share that with the world. And then, just as things were going great, I got a call from a big-time food critic. He wanted to come to my house to taste my food and write a review. I was nervous, I won't lie. This was the big leagues, this was the moment of truth. Would I be able to impress him? Would I be able to show him that I was more than just a plus-size guy with a passion for barbecue? I took a deep breath, put on my game face, and said, "Yes, come on over. I'll show you what I'm working with." Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a whole new chapter in my life. I still remember the days when I was humiliated at the MEET RODIZIO for being plus size. It's crazy how life can turn around, and now I'm known as the barbecue man with people begging for my attention. But with success comes new challenges, and I'm facing them head-on. As my business grew, I found myself struggling to balance my creative vision with the commercial demands of the company. I wanted to stay true to my passion for cooking, but at the same time, I had to think about the bottom line and what would sell. It was a constant battle in my mind, and I often felt like I was being pulled in two different directions. My kitchen, which was once my happy place, started to feel like a source of stress and pressure. I also faced criticism and backlash from some people who felt like I had sold out or compromised my values. They would say things like, "You've changed, you're not the same person you used to be," or "You're just in it for the money now." It was hard to hear those comments, and it made me doubt myself and my decisions. I started to wonder if I had made a mistake by pursuing my passion and turning it into a business. My business partners and investors would often push me to make decisions that would increase profits, but would compromise my values and vision. They wouldn't understand why I was so adamant about using only the freshest ingredients or why I wanted to create a certain atmosphere in my restaurant. They would say things like, "It's just business, it's not personal." But for me, it was personal. It was about creating something that I could be proud of, something that would make a difference in people's lives. The stress and pressure of being in the public eye were also taking a toll on me. I would find myself feeling anxious and overwhelmed, wondering if I was good enough, if my food was good enough, if my restaurant was good enough. I would see people taking pictures of me, of my food, of my restaurant, and I would feel like I was living in a fishbowl. I couldn't go anywhere without being recognized, and it was exhausting. Despite all the challenges, I knew I had to stay grounded and focused on my passion for cooking. I couldn't let the pressures of fame and fortune consume me. I had to find a way to balance my creative vision with the commercial demands of my business, and I had to stay true to my values and vision. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I was determined to make it work. The question was, would I be able to find a way to stay grounded and focused, or would the pressures of success tear me apart? I still remember the day I decided that I wanted to leave a mark on my community, to use my platform as the barbecue man to make a real difference in people's lives. It was a feeling that had been growing inside me for a while, ever since I had overcome the challenges of building my business and had found success. I realized that I had a unique opportunity to use my knowledge and skills to bring people together and create positive change. I started brainstorming ideas, thinking about how I could use my platform to make a positive impact. That's when I came up with the idea of developing a cookbook, one that would share my favorite recipes and cooking techniques with the world. But I didn't want to stop there. I also wanted to create a cooking school where I could teach others the skills that I had learned over the years. I envisioned a community kitchen where people could come together to learn, share, and enjoy good food. As I began to work on my cookbook and cooking school, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. I needed a team of like-minded individuals who shared my passion for cooking and community building. So I started to build a team of collaborators, people who were just as dedicated as I was to making a positive impact. Together, we worked tirelessly to bring my vision to life. My cooking school and community kitchen quickly became a hub of activity, where people from all walks of life could come together to learn and share. I loved seeing the looks on people's faces when they tasted my dishes for the first time, the way their eyes would light up with joy and appreciation. It was moments like those that reminded me of why I was doing this, of the power of food to bring people together and create positive change. As my legacy continued to grow, I couldn't help but think about the future. I wanted to make sure that my knowledge and skills would live on, even after I was gone. I started to think about how I could pass on my legacy to the next generation, how I could ensure that my cooking school and community kitchen would continue to thrive. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to find a way. And as I looked out at my team, at the people who had become like family to me, I knew that I wasn't alone. Together, we would find a way to make sure that my legacy would live on. A legacy that would continue to bring people together and create positive change for years to come. But the question still lingered in my mind. Would I be able to find a way to pass on my knowledge and skills, or would my legacy be limited to my own lifetime? Only time would tell. I still remember the day I was humiliated at the MEET RODIZIO like it was yesterday. The feeling of being plus size and unwanted still lingers in my mind. But as I sit here in my kitchen, surrounded by the people I love, I am filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. My journey from being the outcast to becoming the barbecue man, the one everyone begs for attention, has been nothing short of remarkable. As I look back on the lessons I've learned and the challenges I've overcome, I am reminded of the power of perseverance and determination. I think about the countless hours I spent perfecting my craft, experimenting with new recipes, and pushing myself to be better. I think about the people who doubted me, who said I would never make it, and how I proved them wrong. But my journey isn't just about me. It's about the positive impact I've had on those around me. I think about the people who have come to my barbecues, who have tasted my food, and left with full bellies and big smiles. I think about the community I've built, the friendships I've forged, and the memories we've created together. As I look to the future, I know that my legacy will continue to inspire and uplift others. I know that my story will be a reminder to people that they too can overcome adversity and achieve their dreams. I know that my food will continue to bring people together, to create positive change, and to make a difference in the world. I glance around my kitchen, taking in the sights and sounds of the people I love. My family, my friends, they're all here, enjoying a final meal together. The smell of smoked meat and fresh vegetables fills the air, and the sound of laughter and chatter fills my heart with joy. In this moment, I find a sense of peace and fulfillment. I know that I've made a difference in the world, that I've left my mark. And as I take a bite of my famous barbecue, I am reminded of the power of food to bring people together, to create positive change, and to inspire others. As I chew, I think about the journey that has brought me to this moment. I think about the struggles, the triumphs, and the lessons learned. And I know that no matter what the future holds, I will always be the barbecue man, the one who brings people together, who inspires others, and who makes a difference in the world.